The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, a relief at being done with con season for the year, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy of the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, Alex recaps his trip to PAX Unplugged as both Sean and Alex discuss recent plays. Then they'll review Root from Leader Games. And finally, they'll take a look back at the Duke's review of Queendomino in their Duke's Double Take. And now, The Dukes of Dice.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And this is episode 190, which we're calling Root of All Eagles. That's Root of All Eagles. That episode title, courtesy Blaine Miley over on our Board Game Geek Guild. Alex, do you understand this title? Because I had to kind of explain it to you a couple times.
Well, I do now. So if you were asking me past tense, no, I did not immediately understand. I was like, Eagles, how does that get incorporated? And then it made sense.
And then you're like, wait, what's the name of the game we're reviewing? I'm like, it's right there in the title, Alex. So yeah, we're reviewing Root, and you were just in Philadelphia, Alex, for PAX, which is where a certain National Football League team plays.
Yeah, the defending champs, though. We'll see. That doesn't look as likely this year that they'll win. Doesn't look as likely.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, we get help naming all of our episodes from our awesome guild members over on Board Game Geek. We're guild number 2008. Every episode, or before every episode, I should say, we post a Dukes on Deck where we tell you about what we're going to be talking about so that our guild members can contribute some thoughts and then also some episode title suggestions. And we will give you the rest of the top 6 at the end of the episode. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fine. Do you know what this episode signifies, weirdly? And I just saw that number 190, and it jumped out at me that, hey, we're 10 episodes away from 200.
We're also 12 episodes away from episode 202. We are 8 episodes away from episode 198. I could do this all day, Alex.
Hey, don't pretend like that's not significant.
No, it's pretty cool. Yeah,
all right.
It's pretty neato burrito, Alex.
How are you? How are you, Sean?
Good.
How's the life of Sean?
It's busy. It's busy, and it's the holiday season, and so I'm spending like all of my time fighting about Christmas visitation with my clients and their former significant others. So that's my life.
Are you representing Santa in any of these disputes in some sort of dramatic Christmas on... Wait, Miracle on 34th Street? There we go. Miracle on 34th Street case.
Yeah, actually, Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus are getting a divorce.
Oh, man.
Yeah, there's a custody dispute over the elves, so...
Where are the reindeer? Did the reindeer get claimed yet?
Reindeer are... You can't have custody of reindeer.
Why not?
They're animals.
Well, who's going to feed them?
There's no custody arrangements for like pets in divorce.
Oh, really?
Well, there kind of is sometimes, but that's another story.
I have to get in touch with an ex then.
Jeez. So Alex, we've got we're under the gun a little bit. We've been passing around a sickness in the duchy here for the last 6 weeks, and it's Raquel's turn to be sick. So she's like laid up upstairs, and I gotta go pick up Mariah soon. So we have a lot of goodness to talk about, Alex. So why don't we dive right in?
Yeah, it's the ducal we as far as the illness goes, by the way. I am fit as a fiddle.
Beautiful.
Fit as a fiddle.
So you were at PAX Unplugged this last weekend. Is that not correct, sir?
I was. I had several adventures there. Our hotel was at the lovely Hilton Garden Inn, right across from the convention center, and much to my delight, we were right there in Chinatown, had some fantastic food while we were there, took a trip the night before setup day out to Harrah's, which has sort of become an annual tradition. I ended up winning $5 off of $200 I brought with me, but they also cover all your drinks. So really, I didn't just win $5. I won $5 and a night full of free drinks. Pretty good. Pretty solid. Yeah. But that has nothing to do with games, and as Sean mentioned, we are under the gun, so...
To be fair, Alex, you were playing games at the casino, so that does have something to do with games.
Yeah, you want me to give you my Duke's review of Blackjack?
Were you playing that terrible blackjack where all the tens are gone?
So for folks who don't know, this is referencing when we were in Unrivaled last year, And Sean sat down at this table of blackjack, not realizing the odds were actually heavily in the house's favor under this weird variant that we were playing. No, well, I was playing normal blackjack.
It was your fault because you were looking for like the lowest minimum bet table.
Yep. Sure was.
So it's your fault.
Not all of us can be rich attorneys, Sean. All right. Now, as is typical for most of these larger conventions, and I will say with PAX Unplugged, this year it jumped to being in contention with, say, Origins for being second biggest in the country. This show was a big, big, big deal this year. Very well run, great show for attendees. The play space was ginormous. Tons of tables, tons of people playing, tons of first look games. It's a good place to be. If you're up in that part of the country, it's a good spot. I will say there was a Duchy first up at PAX. I can confirm that Steve O'Rourke, the name father, my arch nemesis and rival, sort of, not really anymore, is actually a person. He stopped by the Monochromatic Wolf booth and said hi. And I got to tell you, Sean, he sounds very, very, very close to Brent Spiner. So if you imagine that voice anytime you see a name father title, imagine Data's voice, and then you'll have the name father.
Okay, that's an interesting tidbit, Alex.
Yeah, but he's been such a huge part of the Duchy community for so long, named obviously more episodes than anyone else. It was fantastic to see him in person. This was his first big convention, if I'm not mistaken. So ran into him, ran into the Mr. Sean, ran into plenty of members of the Duchy over the course of my time out there. Brett Mowers was doing some work with us at Monochromatic Wolf. Jake Bach from Draft Mechanic was over at our booth as well. So it was a Dukes of Dice party at PAX Unplugged, to be sure. I didn't play a ton of games while I was out there, Sean. Certainly not a ton of new games. The one that comes to mind is from our sponsor, TMG. I did swing by their booth, and the Mr. Sean demoed for me. I believe it's called Ghosts of the Moor. It was designed by Michael Kiesling and Wolfgang Kramer, and this is a roll and move game. Sean? Not a roll and move in the traditional sense, but more in the roll and move in the backgammon sense. You have a group of adventurers wandering through a swamp. If you're the last person to leave every turn you're going to roll a die, a d6. Whatever that number is, you have to move one of your pieces that number of spaces. If you're the last to leave a tile, you pick up whatever was on that tile. Most of the times it's something good, sometimes it's ghosts, sometimes it's planks. And you are trying to compete with someone else, possibly multiple people. I think the game plays up to 4 or 5 to get the most points, whether that be in set collection or racing to the truck to get there first and avoid negative points in the form of spooky, spooky ghosts. It was fine. Yeah, it was fine. I don't know if I'd strongly recommend it, but it was a small box and decently fast enough, though not necessarily what you'd expect from a Kramer Kiesling co-design. It's certainly not up to the standard of some of their past things, but that was one of the games I played. Ghosts of the Moor. Spooky. And the rest I'm going to hold for the second part of my PAX recap because, like I said, I didn't play a ton of games. I was busy working, Sean. Work.
Oh, man. Sounds rough. I mean, I'm sure it was rough. I don't mean to minimize.
It wasn't that rough.
Oh, okay. Oh, then I take it back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got a couple plays in recently. You know what I haven't talked about, and I'm just going to mention them. I haven't talked about the Commands and Colors Ancients digital that I downloaded on Steam. Not great, Alex. Not great. It doesn't look good. The interface is kind of clunky. I was super excited, and I played it a couple times, and then I'm like, meh. You know what is pretty cool is Terraforming Mars. Have you gotten a chance to play that digitally yet?
No, not digitally.
So the only downside is there's no drafting. And so I'm hoping that gets added at some point. But so far, I've enjoyed my plays of it online. That's been pretty cool. Also, we had a Keyforge tournament last night at Empire. It was you come in, you buy a new deck. So it's your first time seeing it, playing with it, whatever. And we did a 4-round Swiss tournament. I went 1-3 because my deck was super weird. It was a really bad deck, Alex. It was quite sad. So for those that don't know, Keyforge is this new card game from Fantasy Flight Games. We talked about it last episode, where basically it's a 36-card deck, and your deck is 100% unique because there's a title of the deck on it and all sorts of stuff. Basically, no one's going to have your deck, and there's no way to change cards, and it kind of plays like Hearthstone. But I had 7 of my 36 cards were board wipes. So just like remove everything. But that's not great all the time. It was very situational. My hand was always clogged with them. So,
Sean, I have a Keyforge story. One, I have now bought a starter set and 2 additional decks, so I now have 6 Keyforge decks.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I'm getting into this thing pretty hard.
Don't count the starter decks.
I'm not counting those, because those come with 2 unique decks in the starter set. So I have 6 decks total. I bought 2 separately. Then I bought the starter set, which has 2 other unique decks, and then the basic ones you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then I bought 2 separate unique decks on top of that. So I have 6 unique decks. The best deck still, though, is Smithison, the constantly immovable. And I will tell you, out of PAX, I was going to teach, I did teach Jake from Draft Mechanic, Jake Bach, my good buddy, how to play Keyforge. And being a jerk, I had 2 decks at the time. I had Smithison, and I had Harrier Tornado Capgray. Harrier Tornado Capgray is an okay deck. It's fine, but it's not a Smithison. Smithison is legendary. Guess which deck I took for myself, Sean?
Oh, I know. I know the answer to this.
Just guess that.
Yeah, you took the powerful deck.
Yeah, I absolutely took the powerful deck. And I wrecked his face. Beat him 3 keys to nothing. And it was a game where that's a control deck. Smithison, the constantly immovable. Smithison, the constantly immovable, is a control deck. So it was a lot of him playing something out, it goes to the discard pile. Playing something out, it goes to the discard pile. It was a absolutely brutal game. And Jake said, "Thank you. You have crushed any potential love I had for Keyforge." So I'm great at fostering love of games. Right?
So you're the princess and the pea when it comes to learning the games. Mm-hmm. And apparently you're the princess and the pea when it comes to teaching games.
Now, I will say I played some games later in the show. In fact, Brett Mowers, who was at our booth, who's on the guild a little bit, heard about this play of me smashing Jake so bad and wanted to play against Smithison with my other deck and got absolutely crushed the same way, much to his wife Laura's amusement. And then we played a rematch with switching the decks, and it was very close, very close. I like Keyforge a lot, Sean. A lot. We didn't give it a score. We basically did a review of it. It's probably a 6 for me.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's probably a 6 for me. I really like that game.
It would probably be a 5. It's probably a 5 for me.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so the actual game I'm going to talk about, though, that's here on the show notes, and I have to do what's on the show notes, Alex. I mean, we could keep talking about Keyforge, but the show notes are the show notes. So I got to play an older game from way back, way back in the early days of board gaming, 2009, Alex.
All right.
Do you know that they made board games back then?
Did they really?
Yeah, they did. It's pretty wild. So this is Maria. Rio Grande is the most recent publisher of this. This is designed by Richard Sivell. And this was a 2009 Jogo de Ano winner. And for those of you who are more Sean-style gamers, the Jogo de Anos are they're the Portuguese game of the year. They're the ones that I really pay attention to because they're kind of the heavier, meatier games as compared to, say, the Spiel des Jahres. So Maria is a 3-player only game. I mean, there's ways to play it 2 players, but it's really a 3-player game. And it's about the war of, I was about to say the war of Austrian succession in the 1700s. Is that something you're particularly familiar with and excited about, Alex?
Incredibly.
Yeah, that's a theme that
so excited.
So you're taking on the role of Frederick, the King of Prussia, or Maria, who is the Queen of Austria, or Louis the some number, the King of France. I forget which one. Louis the 15th, I think. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to put all of your victory control markers out on the board by controlling certain areas on the board. And this is a linked point-to-point map system where it's not like map spaces. It's little nodes that have lines between them, and you can move your pieces in certain ways. You can move them a couple spaces if they're on major roads, less if they're on like the back roads. You have these support tokens that you have to kind of keep because you have to maintain a supply line. Otherwise, your armies are going to start losing troops. There's this interesting hidden troop size for your different armies. So I have this army over here, but you may not necessarily know how big it is because I have it written down secretly, but I have to reveal it once we actually engage in a battle. There's an interesting political phase that happens at the start of each round where various events will happen and you can bid on how they get enacted, which is pretty cool. But ultimately, you're doing all of this with a hand of cards, and they're similar to poker cards or to regular playing cards, but they're 2 to 10 of 4 different suits. And so when you're doing a battle, the map is divided into a grid. And so one region on it is diamonds and then hearts and then clubs and then spades, and then it keeps repeating. I think it's probably like a 10 by 10 grid or something. And there's really no rhyme or reason why a heart area is a heart area. Like it's evenly distributed throughout. And so when I'm fighting in a heart area, I'm going to use heart cards for my hand to bolster my troops. So I move into this heart area. I reveal, hey, I've got 3 troops in my army. You've got 5 in yours. So I have to play a card to now get the differential in my favor. And then you can play a card, and then I can play a card. And what's interesting is, like, let's say that we just have this big battle over here in hearts, and now the third player, knowing that I've just played a bunch of heart cards, is going to attack another heart region of mine. Oh, shoot, I don't have enough. Or, oh, it was a bluff. I still have all these sweet heart cards left. It kind of weird. It's kind of a weird combat resolution system because it's not like these are mountain regions and these are swamp regions, and it's very abstract. And it's okay. It just kind of threw me for a loop. And I kind of screwed up the game. Because it is a 3-player game, there's this delicate balance. And I overcommitted to battles early on, which wiped me out and just kind of messed up the game. And that was my fault. But I didn't quite understand the dynamics of it. So I picked up a copy, because that's what I do. And I'm interested to play this again. I don't know that I'm super crazy about it because of that combat resolution system. I've heard people say it's not really a war game. It's a game about a war. If that makes any sense.
Okay.
Because it doesn't feel like some of the other, strategy war games that I've been playing recently. But it's interesting. And I'll definitely give it another couple plays at least, and maybe it'll grow on me. Who knows?
All right.
You can go find that. Give it a play, Alex.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, glad you had fun with it.
That's Maria.
All right, Maria. I got a bunch more stuff to talk about, including a little piece of news I found out while I was at PAX. Let's start off though with 1001 Odysseys. Sean, have you heard of this game?
I have not. No.
This is from Asmati Games. It's not out yet. It's going to be on Kickstarter, I believe, in January or February, but in the next month or two. Designed by Chris Chieslik. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I believe he's the head of Asmati Games. This is the same company that did Motainai. And this is a storytelling adventure game. Kind of like Time Stories, but without the peril, at least in the version I was playing out. In other words, you're trying to solve puzzles, you go around, you can talk to people, but there isn't really a time limit or a way to keep score, at least as far as they showed me. It's sort of like trying to uncover the story as you go. Now, does that make it a game? I don't know, but I had a lot of fun with whatever it was. The story was charming. It's one of those where it's sort of all of the above and below book without any of the game. And I enjoy those stories in that setting, and I found the story and setting in this one, at least the one I played, pretty charming. Basically, our spaceship needed to get an emissions inspection, but all of the adorable, fluffy little mechanics were asleep on the job. So we had to solve that mystery, and luckily enough, we did. But that's 1001 Odysseys by Asmati Games. Keep an eye out for that one. The art on it is adorable. Looks very Miyazaki-esque. At one point during this show, Sean, I stopped by the Fog of Love booth and met Jacob Jaskov. I might be butchering that name, but he is the designer of Fog of Love, one of my favorite games of last year and favorite games, period. And I learned something, Sean. Sean Ramirez, were you aware that there is a sequel coming to Fog of Love?
Ooh, no.
And this sequel also investigates a relationship between two people, but it's a 4-player game.
Okay.
The game is called tentatively, I don't know if this will be the final name for this, Midlife Crisis.
Oh, wow.
Midlife Crisis.
So it's a married couple or a couple and some dalliances, some
Not
some
quite.
affairs. No.
No.
Oh.
It's actually more less saucy and more intriguing than that might appear.
Okay.
As Jacob described it in talking to me, and I'm going to try and get him on for a holding court to talk about this in more depth, the conflict you have at that phase in your life is not between getting to know this person, not getting to know this person, what does this person want, but between almost an internal conflict in some ways. How well do you know yourself? How well are you balancing past desires and past ambitions with current dreams and current realities? How do those things mesh as far as your life goes? And so two people play one person, and then two other people play the other person in the relationship.
Oh.
They represent conflicting desires within that person.
Yeah. Interesting.
Whoa. I don't think it's coming out anytime soon. As he told me, he's going to have a prototype ready for testing probably April of next year. So I wouldn't expect to even see this thing on Kickstarter until mid next year at the very earliest. But boy, oh boy, am I excited for that game.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, he does really cool work. And yeah, I'm excited to see whatever that turns into. So that's Midlife Crisis, the sequel to Fog of Love. Keep an ear out for that one over the coming months. Who knows when that thing might crop up. Other games I played, new to me at the show, there was a game called Pasaraya Supermarket that Jake from Draft Mechanics showed me. Sean, have you heard of Pasaraya Supermarket?
I have not, Alex.
So the game in full is Pasaraya Supermarket Manager. It's a self-published title by Sei Wei Long, who I believe, don't quote me on this, may be from... he's from Malaysia. There we go. I just found it. He's from Malaysia. And this is a very interesting deck builder where you are managing a supermarket. Your goal is to make the most money by selling goods to meet customer demand. That's how this works. The deck builder works in a really cool way. Any currency you earn goes into your bank, and then at any time on your turn, I believe, you're allowed to pull money in from the bank into your deck, into your discard pile, which will get shuffled into your deck. That money is then what you'll use to buy staff members, to buy goods to stock in your grocery store, and then as you spend it, it goes out of your deck and out of the game period. So you may be earning more and then spending more and trying to balance and keep your deck thin enough to be interesting while having enough money in it to allow you to do what you want to do is an interesting balancing act that you'll play over the course of the game. You'll have staff members that will give you extra actions, including you can hire a thief to steal from other opponents' marketplaces, which is how I was able to sneak some points away from Jake towards the very end of that game. The game itself, very interesting and a lot of promise mechanically. It just is a few rounds too long and a little bit too repetitive, but it's a really cool concept. I always like games with unique themes, and big thanks to Jake for showing me that one. So that's Pasaraya Supermarket Manager, and that's pretty much a look at PAX. I didn't play a ton of new to me stuff out at that show, which is unfortunate, but I know it's a good show for a lot of people, and again, if you're in that area, it would be one worth going to if you'd like to get out to a major convention at some point.
So let me ask you this. Is there anything that sets PAX apart from the other cons?
Do you like pins?
No. I mean, I am neutral towards pins.
Pins themselves are sold. So if there's a company you really like or an IP you really like, Penny Arcade is there in force at different vendor booths, and you can usually get a pin of whatever your favorite thing is. They don't come cheap, but hey, if you like pin trading, that's a good show to do it at. What else? Vendor Hall's open later on Sundays, which means, well, it's annoying, but it doesn't really affect anyone attending it in any practical purpose other than me. Let's see. The first look area is pretty robust. They have a lot of stuff that comes over from Essen. They also have a lot of good learn-to-play segments, so they'll have these big rooms where they'll teach a bunch of tables of games simultaneously and have them play it, which I think is a cool feature that you don't see at a ton of conventions. It has a smaller feel to it than, say, a Gen Con, but still has enough vendors there where you're going to be able to find a ton of games and get introduced to a lot of things. It closes early, so they shut down the hall at midnight, which for a convention is pretty unusual, but it basically means the show is done at that time. There's no other real places to play, open gaming areas, any of that. Once the convention center's done for the day, too bad, so sad, go to bed. So, what else? What else sets PAX apart? I mean, you get the folks associated with Penny Arcade who may or may not be there in any given moment. I don't know if any of Mike Krahulik or any of those folks were there this time around. That's all I can think of, but my guess is that show is only going to grow in stature, and it's going to be well worth attending, to the point where you might start hearing about PAX releases from vendors. Yeah. It would not surprise me.
Cool.
They are likely to be more on the casual side of things, so it's not as friendly of a Sean Con, I will say. It's much more friendly for the Alex type of gamer, because that's really who they're catering towards and who tends to show up at that show, at least right now. That mix may get more heavier gamer as the years go on.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, while you were doing that, I was playing a little bit of Brass. Actually, that's not true. That's just not true.
Not true.
The Brass happened like a week and a half ago. So I take that back.
Way to lie to our listeners.
Yeah. Is it okay if I talk about Brass, Alex? Are you does it bring up bad memories for you?
For folks who don't know, Brass was the game that led to the argument that ultimately ended my 5-year relationship with my girlfriend at the time. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'll have you know, Alex, that hope springs eternal, because
on what sense?
That was the old Brass. That was Brass Birmingham, or what is now called Brass Birmingham. There is a new Brass. There is a new beginning with Brass Lancashire. Sure, why not? Lancashire, why not? So Alex, there's a new Brass that maybe you can associate some new memories with.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Mike Fitzgerald told me this game is unbelievably amazing. Is that true?
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. So I love regular Brass, old Brass. I actually kickstarted both the new versions, both Birmingham and Lancashire. I hadn't played them. They've been just kind of sitting up on the shelf of shame for a while. And I was able to get a game in 3 players the other night on Duke's Dice Wednesday. So Brass, in general, is a route building game where you're kind of sharing these routes with other players on this map of England. And there are these different towns where you're able to build different types of buildings that are going to supply coal or iron, or there are factories that you're able to then ship off and get some points or income. So there's kind of an engine building in the sense that it's not engine building. You're trying to increase your income so you have more money to do stuff as the game goes on. Try not to take out too many loans, because that reduces your income but gives you an influx of cash. But it can also be detrimental. So Lancashire is a different map, number one. But in addition, there are different types of buildings and there are some different resources. The most notable one is there are breweries that create beer for you. And you need this beer in order to do certain things that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. And so it kind of replaces certain mechanics. So like, for example, there's no shipping in Lancashire like there is in Birmingham, the original Brass. So it's interesting. And if anything, it's probably a little bit less intuitive. Like, I think I would probably rather teach a new player Birmingham, but I think I like Lancashire more. It was really good, and the new components are awesome. I mean, you remember the old Brass. I mean, it is ugly as sin. It is just terrible looking. This new version from Roxley is super sweet. So something I always was curious about, Alex. One of the things that some people either love or hate about Brass is that all of the hard work you do in the first half of the game, you wipe it off the board. You wipe off all of these canals that you've built, all of the different connections you've made, and then you start doing railroads. Is that something that bothered you? Like, kind of starting over? You're not quite starting from scratch, because certain buildings will still stick around. But it seems like that's something that would normally annoy you.
Sean,
remember.
All I remember from that play is getting a phone call midway through wondering why I wasn't over at over where my girlfriend at the time was babysitting and got a call wondering I wasn't over at her workplace joining them for brunch. That's all I remember from that game, Sean.
Okay. Well, fair enough.
I remember enjoying brass.
Good.
I don't remember whether I enjoyed that particular mechanic or not.
I don't know. It's weird to me that you liked brass. It just doesn't. It's not a game you would typically like.
You don't know me.
But go figure.
You don't know me.
So I think what's going to be interesting is, do I need both copies? Do I need Birmingham and Lincolnshire? Like I said, they might serve different roles, but at the same time, space is at a premium, Alex, and I'm getting ready for another purge soon.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's what we played. That was Brass Lincolnshire. Let's head on over to the news desk.
First up in news, Clank Legacy Acquisitions Incorporated coming to theaters near you, and by theaters I mean board game stores, fall of next year. Sean, I think this technically fulfills the occasionally role-playing games part of the show, even though the game itself is probably not a role-playing game. What are we talking about here?
So are you familiar with Acquisitions Incorporated?
I have heard of them. I have never heard a show not familiar with it.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. So it's kind of an RPG podcast that's been around for 20 years. So I don't know a whole lot about it, and they're not telling us a whole lot. But basically, that's branding that they've attached to Clank. So from their press release, this was actually an announcement at PAX U. They said, Find your own franchise. Found. No, it's found, because you're founding something, like Founders of Gloomhaven. Found your own franchise, the legendary adventuring company, Acquisition Incorporated, and shepherd your fledgling treasure hunters to immortal corporate glory over the course of multiple games. I think that's the first time we've seen a deck builder and a legacy. I'm not sure how that's going to work mechanically. I'm assuming some combination of asymmetric powers, or your starter deck is different, or that you build up over time. You're maybe doing things. I mean, I'm thinking like multiple dungeons, and you might be able to do things to the dungeons. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing here. Any ideas that you might have?
That's an interesting one. Yeah, I don't know how that's going to change over time. My guess is, will the changes have as much to do with the deck building or more to do with player powers or the map rather than necessarily? I think I don't think it can be as much in the deck building, although certain items that might be made available might be tied into that as well.
Right.
Or there might be scenarios where you start deep in the dungeon and then have to just find your way out straight up. But there's some space to play in there for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, hopefully we'll get some more information pretty soon. It's still a good ways out, fall 2019. So,
fair enough.
I'm interested.
Next up, from my hometown friends, my new hometown, I guess, Stonemaier Games, Wingspan, set to be released early next year. And Sean, I will be honest about this. You know more about this game than I do, because I have not been to Jamie Stegmaier's game night in some number of weeks. And while I have played some stuff pre-release, I tend to not be part of his playtesting groups for whatever reason. So I have not heard much about this, nor have I had a chance to play it. So hit me with it.
All right. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. This got information's kind of been trickling out or from the Facebook group. So Jamie does something with like these Facebook groups. Really promotes community that way for the different games. So there's like Scythe Facebook group and Viticulture Facebook group, and I think that's really interesting. And I know he's really active in them, and he's really responsive. So I think that's pretty cool. So this is according to the Facebook group. If you like terraforming Mars, check, and you like gizmos, check, then this game might be for you. Right off the bat, I'm pretty intrigued, right? So we're talking about, I don't know if it's drafting cards, but you're collecting cards in some way, and you're putting them in different action spots, different habitats on your player board. And as you're adding things in, that action spot gets stronger and stronger. So a little bit of, well, not a little bit, but a lot of engine building there. So this is designed by Elizabeth Hargrave, and she's a fairly new designer, which is an interesting pickup for Stonemaier. The other thing of note, she designed a game called Tussie Mussy, which was the co-winner of the Button Shy Gen Cant Design Contest. And I don't know much about that, but I'm interested to take a look at that. I like a lot of what Button Shy does, like really cool games and really small packages, little wallet games, basically, which is pretty cool. Art, Beth Sobel. She did some of the art for this. Natalie Rojas and Ana Maria Martinez Jaramillo. It looks beautiful. Like it reminds me a little bit art-wise of like Evolution. Maybe not quite, but it's really beautiful. Have you seen the cover art or any of the cards or?
I just on looking on the Facebook page really quickly, I see some of this, and it looks very colorful, looks very nice, and Beth Sobel does great work, so it doesn't surprise me that this would be a very good-looking game.
So yeah, I think this is going to be right around the corner. It looks like January 2nd is the launch of the pre-order campaign, and I'm interested. I mean, when you talk about games like Terraforming Mars, Gizmos, engine building, action selection, your actions get more powerful as you make decisions. I don't know if it's multi-use cards. I mean, it kind of sounds like it, depending on where you put them. I'm not sure. I'm definitely interested in finding out more. And I've got faith in Jamie and Stonemaier. He makes some pretty good decisions.
Be curious to see how this one does. It certainly looks right up my alley, and Stonemaier tends to do a lot of stuff like that as well. So if I get a chance to play it, I will let folks know how it is. All right, and finally, just launched on Kickstarter this week and tearing up a storm, Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. From Awaken Realms, who also has done This War of Mine and Lords of Hellas. Sean, did you insta-back this upon seeing it?
Oh, no. And I'm struggling, Alex. I'm struggling. So this is a game for 1 to 4 players, and it is kind of like Lords of Hellas is sort of like a steampunky, cyberpunky ancient Greece. This is like a grim, dark Avalon, a grimdark Arthurian Legends kind of feel. It looks really cool. The art is really cool. There's not a ton, but there's a decent amount of minis. There's an upgrade you can get with a bunch more minis. They all look really sweet. Oh man, it looks really cool. So yeah, this looks like an adventure type game. It looks a little bit like a Seventh Continent style game, or maybe like Mage Knight, where you're going about this shared board and adventuring. Lords of Hellas is one of my top games of the year. This War of Mine, I'm not super interested in playing it just because I don't want to explore what it's doing, but I have respect for that design space and for what it is doing. So yeah, this is kind of a tough call, and I haven't quite decided. So from the Kickstarter, it says that Tainted Grail will bring you adventures, survival, and exploration mechanics perfectly paired with character development and exciting combat and diplomatic systems. There's an immersive, story-driven exploration which brings the world of Avalon to life, confronting you and your team with difficult choices that have far-reaching consequences. Over 100,000 words of branching story scripts provide many different paths to your goal, as well as several different endings to your adventures. So the campaign itself, Alex, is like 30 to 40 hours. And because there's all of these different branchings, it's supposed to be replayable. So it's not one and done. But even 30, 40 hours is a decent chunk of time. So
no doubt.
What are your thoughts?
So I have an Awaken Realms game, Sean. I pledged for and received my copy of This War of Mine.
Yeah.
And a very ambitious game, and a game that intends to be very immersive and has the storytelling elements that I tend to like in games. And as a game itself, off of the one try to try and play it, and remember, this was a game that made the promise of, hey, you can play this without actually reading the rulebook. Like, learn on the fly. You're good to go. It just handled it in a very clunky way, in a way that didn't really make it easier to play. It had rules tucked on certain pages like, hey, if you'd like to reference this rule that takes a bit to understand or remember, turn to this page of the rulebook, 215. It was tricky to learn, but gorgeously thematic. The execution of the game is what has me worried and would have me cautious about this one. I think it looks amazing. From a production standpoint, it looks great. From what it's trying to do, if they can pull it off, wonderful. They're going to have a ton of overjoyed backers. The story is going to come through really clearly. And for me, I am hesitant because of my experience with this War of Mine. Now, I am in the minority clearly because this campaign is killing it on Kickstarter. It is, as of the time of this recording, sitting at $2.1 million US. Good sir. Killing it.
Yeah, so if you're interested in this and you just want to pick up the core box plus a bunch of the stretch goals, it's $89. However, the shipping is like $20 to $30, depending if you're going to do a one-wave or a two-wave shipping. So basically, if you want to get just the core game sometime in August 2019, at least that's the plan, it's like $23 for shipping here in the US. Or you can wait until, was it May 2020, to get everything in one and save like $10 or something. Which, yeah, that seems weird. There's another pledge level. It is about $140 US. That gives you the core game, the stretch goals, and then 20 sweet monster miniatures. You know, if I'm in for 90, Alex, I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. But then I'm just like, well, why wouldn't I get the miniatures at this point? And I'm just like, 140. Oh my goodness. Especially given that I have backed way off of Kickstarter, like big time, especially for some of these bigger purchases. So this ends December 28th. So I've got some time to think about it.
Yeah, and by the way, they're boasting that open and play system on this game too, as well as a quick save system. So, I'm not backing it, but it wouldn't surprise me if you don't back it.
Lords of Hellas was really good. I mean, really, really good.
You're going to be in on this one, Sean.
I don't know.
I think so.
Maybe I can take Chewie out of preschool for 1 month or 1 week.
Oh, boy. Oh,
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that is Tainted Grail. Whoa, Tainted Grail. The Fall of Avalon from Awaken Realms on Kickstarter through December 28th. Back now or forever hold your peace. And that is a look at the news. Sean, when I get a handful of Berkey jerky, I love just sitting back and enjoying life at the old Topper. Boy, I remember those days at the Topper, just sitting back, eating nothing but jerky and Berkey Spice, Happy Mouth Spice. I don't know, I'm plugging a lot of Berkey stuff here, Sean.
Well, Alex, I don't know that we should be talking about Berkey Spice or Berkey's Jerky because they are not technically sponsors of the Dukes of Dice. only Game Toppers LLC. So I'm a little hesitant here to talk about anything else Berkey related.
Let me consult with my attorney.
Oh wait, that's me. Yeah, that's fine. But Alex, let's do talk about a Game Topper. You are the proud owner of a Game Topper. You have one over at Monochromatic Wolf. What's the whole idea here with these Game Toppers?
Well, here's the thing. If you like upgrading your table experience, if you like playing on a nice surface, you want to really have that game sparkle when you have that game night, there's not going to be much of a better bet for your money than a Game Topper. You can pack it up when you need it to go. You can set it out when it's time to play. It's easily customizable with a bunch of different mats, cup holders, and the like. If you are in the market for a game table but don't want to overspend, you're not going to do much better than a Game Topper.
So go check out Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com and hit up Berkey at the next con you see for some jerky or some Happy Mouth.
Tell them it's on the Dukes.
Wait, does that mean we're paying for it?
No.
Wait, no. Don't tell them it's on the Dukes.
I mean, maybe.
No.
That's Game Toppers. GameToppersLLC.com. Sean, for many years, a great debate has been held about a great river. Is it Tigris or is it Tigris? Sean, which one is it?
It's Tigris. There's no debate. You just can't pronounce things.
No, it might be. It might be something else. Well, Sean, no matter what you call that magnificent river, Tigris or Tigris, there's a game that celebrates it. It's Trade on the Tigris from Tasty Minstrel Games, designed by Jeff Engelstein and Ryan Sturm. This game encourages you to be the best trader in a civilization in the cradle of civilization. Will you be a dictator, or will you be more democratic in how you approach things? Will you try and scam other people through trades, or will you pull off the perfect set by cooperating with your neighbors? Who knows? You'll find out if you pick up Trade on the Tigris.
Go check out Trade on the Tigris and all of TMG's other awesome titles at playtmg.com. So, Alex, I've decided that you can be the new boss, as long as you take care of all of us. You can take care of all of us?
I mean, I gotta get my beak wet. But yeah, sure, I'll take care of you.
You can get your beak wet, since you're a critter of some sort anyway.
I'm a pelican. I'm a beautiful pelican.
But Alex, just make sure, boss, that we all get our beaks wet.
Everyone knows Boss Pelican takes care of his own.
Because if you don't, Boss Pelican Alex, we may replace you with someone a little bit more amenable to all of our individual interests.
No one replaces Pelican Boss Alex.
If you like this little teleplay, perhaps you should check out Good Critters from Arcane Wonders. Good Critters is a game for 4 to 8 criminal critters pulling off heists and fighting over the loot. Whoever's chosen as boss can distribute the loot however they like, but it's the crew that has the final say. If the crew doesn't like the split, they might just tell the boss to take a hike and put some other critter in charge. In the end, the critter collects the most valuable stash of loot is the winner. So Alex, this will be available for purchase in November of 2018.
That's Good Critters, and if you want to find out more about Arcane Wonders' other titles, including the Dice Tower Essentials line, you can go to arcanewonders.com. This week, we're taking a charming journey with woodland critters. Woodland critters that happen to want to kill other woodland critters. No, we're not talking about Happy Tree Friends, the game. We're talking about Root.
Root is an asymmetric war game, but disguised in a cute, fluffy package. It's designed by Cole Worley, art by Kyle Farron, and published by Leader Games. And this is as asymmetric as it gets, Alex. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh my goodness. Overwhelmingly asymmetric.
Yeah, so I'm gonna let me do a little bit of a narrative thing here from a description of the game, because I think it provides a better context, and I think actually having learned this game and taught this game, I feel like it would have been better if this context, this narrative context, were presented, because I think everything would make more sense. So the nefarious Marquis de Cat has seized the great woodlands, intent on harvesting its riches. Under her iron rule, the many creatures of the forest have banded together. This woodland alliance will seek to strengthen their presence by building hideouts and launching missions to subvert the rule of the cats. In this effort, the alliance may enlist the help of vagabonds who are able to move through the more dangerous woodland paths. Though some may sympathize with the alliance's hopes and dreams, these wanderers are old enough to remember the great birds of prey who once controlled the woods. Meanwhile, Alex, at the edge of the region, the proud, squabbling Aerie have found a new commander whom they hope will lead their faction to reclaim their ancient birthright. The stage is set for a contest that will decide the fate of the Great Woodland. It's up to the players to decide which group will ultimately take root. Hey, that's the name of the game, Alex.
Whoa.
So, all right. So I'm not going to go into a full-blown rules overview here because it just would be way too difficult. But basically, you have different factions that are trying to be the first to collect 30 victory points. There are some shared ways that you can collect victory points, or shared methods, rather. One is by fighting others, removing their warrior pieces from the board and removing their buildings from the board. Those will net you a victory point each. Additionally, you can craft certain improvements. These are on some of the cards have these crafting things you can make, which will give you some amount of victory points. But then really, and I think most of the time, the bulk of your points are going to come from faction-specific ways of earning points. So like, for example, you have the Marquis de Cat, who is the ruler of this realm, and they're trying to tamp down on insurgencies and things popping up, but also expand their economy by building these different buildings, which are going to net them points in different ways. Then you have, say, the Vagabond, who is very unique in that there's only one piece. Everyone else has like all of these armies. The Vagabond is just one dude on the board that moves around, and he's trying to find certain items that are hidden in the ruins around the board, but also exchange things with the different players and gain influence among them or notoriety with them to earn points. So there's different ways. Basically, a lot of times it comes out to playing pieces from your player board onto the board is going to generate you some amount of points, and there are different ways that it goes about doing that. There are 3 phases of each player's turn. There is Birdsong, which is just the first phase. Then there is it just day? I think day and evening.
Yes,
and
I think that's right.
And what's interesting is you may have a similar action that in one faction is available in Birdsong, but for another faction it's available in evening. So the order of how things happen can be different depending on your particular faction. The board is made up of these different clearings and then paths from one clearing to the other. And each clearing is one of 3 different suits, basically, which is going to have some interaction with some of the card play. And you're trying to control these different regions by having more warriors and buildings in a particular region than other players, because by ruling them, you're going to be able to do certain things from your player board, essentially. Whereas if I just have presence somewhere, I may not necessarily be able to do things that are going to earn me points or let me build up buildings or something like that. Combat is fairly straightforward, and it's somewhat predictable. Basically, when I'm able to move into a clearing with another player's pieces and we want to fight, or I take an action to fight, I'm going to count up how many guys I have, how many guys you have, and then we're going to roll 2 D12s. However, these D12s are simply 0, 1, 2, and 3 repeated equally among them. And so the attacker will roll both die. The attacker gets the value that's higher. So if I roll a 3 and a 1, then as the attacker, I'm getting the 3. You, Alex, as the defender, are getting the 1. I'm going to kill 3 of your pieces. That's warriors and buildings. You're going to kill 1 of mine. Although if I only had 2 guys there, I'm kind of wasting an attack or wasting a kill because I can only kill equal to the number of warriors I have present, if that makes sense. I don't think I want to go too much more into a rules overview because ultimately it just kind of breaks down to the different faction-specific rules. And that would just take a pretty long time because that's something that has taken a long time explaining these rules to the various players because there's just a lot of different rules for the different factions. So, Alex, what are your initial thoughts of Root?
I mean, that last 2 sentences you just said about the rules kind of sums it up a little bit, Sean. This is a game that is delightfully charming. I showed the box art of this to my girlfriend, Abby, and she was charmed by how this thing looked. I think it looks amazingly charming, too. It is a gorgeous-looking game. I love the production. They've done a lot of smart things. They've desperately done everything they can to make this complicated, rule-heavy game easy to grok. Whether that be player boards, whether that be 4 rule books, which we'll talk about shortly. And this is one of those rare games that I will tell you, I'm going to give it a score today. I think there's a good chance that score could go up if I get more plays of this over the next year. And I think it's probably likely I will get more plays of this. But it's a game that takes some time and takes some depth to appreciate. You have to understand what all of the other factions are trying to do to effectively use your own faction in this game. And because they're so asymmetric, that's not always so easy to do. So I will tell you, the assessment I give today is not my final word on this game. This isn't like most games where in the double take it's more likely to go down than up. I think this is the opposite. But we'll talk about some of the reasons for that as we go forward. What about you, Sean?
So this has been described as kind of a lighter coin game. Coin is short for counterinsurgency. There are a handful of these games from GMT, Cuba Libre, Falling Skies, a bunch, Andean Abyss, Fire in the Lake, and they're all pretty dang complex. They're all asymmetric, and it's this idea that there are multiple factions that are on their own side. They're each trying to win, but there's a sort of push and pull, and sometimes you got to help out someone else to keep someone else from winning or being in better position. And it's this idea that there are these governmental forces and then these counterinsurgent, or rather these insurgent forces. So these rebels. And that's what we have here, kind of. So you have the Marquis de Cat, who is the government. There is another kind of governmental force, the Airy, the birds, and then obviously the Woodland Alliance or the rebels. And then there's this weird vagabond who's just running around doing a bunch of weird stuff. So as someone who owns a bunch of coin games, who likes a bunch of coin games, but realizes, man, these are hard to teach, and they're hard to, you need a dedicated play group for these coin games. This is very much a good stepping stone, and I think it's a lot more accessible than a lot of coin games. And I think the big question is, and I may have revealed this when I talked about this game a couple months ago when I first played it, the question is this the type of game where it's a lighter version of something that ultimately leaves me wanting the full thing and leaves me feeling unsatisfied at the end? And I think that will have, the answer to that
is yes.
We'll have, hold on there, sport. The answer to that will have a big effect on my score, and you'll find out towards the end here. But I enjoy it. I enjoy it, Alex.
Okay, fair enough. It does seem like the kind of game that is more of a Sean game than an Alex game on the surface.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned 4 rule books. Really, it's 2 rule books until you add in the expansion. But basically, there's kind of a learn-to-play book, and then there's a very detailed rule book, very GMT style with number points, number outline form, which sometimes works well and sometimes make things hard to find. What was your experience, if any, Alex, with the rule books?
So I had a decent amount of experience with the rule books, having attempted to learn the game a couple of times, and successfully to a degree. Attempted to learn and teach the game. The walkthrough, they do kind of this, hey, go through your first 2 turns to really understand how this works, is really nice. It's not something that we did, but it's something that I kind of used as a guideline for when I played the Woodland Alliance, which I would say is, I don't know if this is your assessment too, Sean, but at least of the base game factions, seems to be the most complicated to use.
Oh, no, I think the Ares
not to win with necessarily, but to use.
Yeah, I think the Ares is the most complicated to lose or to use because it requires the most planning.
Okay, interesting. So, and we'll talk through some of the factions a little more about what they do and why I think that. But in any case, I use that as a way to kind of get a handle on the game. The game also does a good job of, hey, when you're setting this thing up, you flip over to the backside of your player board, and it tells you what pieces you need, what your setup steps are on the main board, flip your board over, and then do this other thing. I thought that was brilliant, Sean. I really loved how they did that. Fantastic stuff. The rulebook itself, weirdly enough, there was a question that was a persistent question that I was like, yeah, the game is played this way, and someone challenged me on it, and then I looked it up in the rulebook, and I couldn't find where it spelled this out, and it's something really basic, and I don't know if it was just an assumption that they made, but basically the assumption was, yeah, you play through your full turn, birdsong, daylight, and nighttime phase, and the person I was playing with said, wait, we don't all do our birdsong, then we all do our daylight, then we all do our evening phase? No, that's not how the game works. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, well, it says it in the rules. Well, you couldn't quite find that. So it may be in there. We may have just overlooked it, but even some basic stuff is hard to find. Other than that, it does a good job of making a complicated game as easy as possible. And even then, though, Sean, I don't know, for me, it got completely over the hurdle on the first couple plays of this thing. Yeah.
So 1.4, game structure, Alex.
Here we go.
Each player's turn consists of 3 phases, birdsong, daylight, and evening. After a player completes all 3 phases, the next clockwise player begins their turn.
I'm bad at reading.
Play continues until one player has won the game.
All right. Well, ignore that whole thing I just said. I'm bad at reading. I'm bad at rule books. Don't give me a rule book to try and teach a game. I'm going to miss something. Sorry to Leader Games, but my overall point still stands. Off of the first couple of games, in terms of fully grokking this, it still has not 100% clicked. Yeah,
I agree. And I think that having played coin games, I definitely had a leg up on understanding because similar to the coin series, you are trying to perform Z. But before you can do Z, you have to set it up with Y. But before you can do Y, you have to set it up with X, you know? And so, yes, that's present in like certain Euro games and other games, but it's like you said, I think it's a little bit harder of a concept to grok in this style game. And this isn't, for me, it's not necessarily an issue with the rulebook. I think the rulebook does a good job because you've got the learn to play book and then you've got the full-on rulebook. But it definitely affects play experiences where if you have new players, man, that's just so much information to process. Like, okay, I'm trying to figure out how I do things, how I win. I'm trying to figure out why would I do this? Oh, I need to do this because eventually I need to do that. Oh, that's weird. And because so much of this style of game is not just doing your own thing, but making sure that you're attacking the right person. Hey, why are you attacking me? I'm like in last place and I'm in no position. You're just letting this other person run away with the game, you know? So in order to be really effective at that, you need to not only understand what you're doing, but how does this other faction work? How are they scoring points? Why is it important that I move over here to this clearing instead of this clearing? And as people are kind of figuring that out the first game, it can create some uneven play experiences. And then next game, maybe you're playing a different faction and yeah, I understand the last faction I played really well, and so I can interact with them. So it's difficult, and this is something where you want multiple plays, if you enjoy the game. And you're going to be rewarded for having multiple plays, and I think rewarded for playing with people who have played enough times so that you get the fullest experience. So you don't have someone just run away with the lead.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Well, what about art and components? I think pretty nifty, right?
Pretty nifty, immerses you in the world, looks stunning, gorgeous. The card art is lovely. The components are all of a high quality. The only thing or things I can think of are when you get abilities from cards, they kind of tell you to tuck it under the board, but there's not really a great spot for that. Recessed player boards for some of the components would be a nifty upgrade, similar to what, say, Scythe does, but I really don't have many complaints, Sean. This thing looks amazing. And I love that it has a double-sided map on it, too.
Right. Yeah, no, I think the art components here are, Leader Games just knocks it out of the park. It has fantastic table presence. I'm just going to repeat all the things that you said. I don't think we need to go too much into this because really and truly, it is a fantastic production.
Yeah, and very charming. Incredibly charming.
Yeah. So, gameplay, what factions have you played as?
I have only gotten a chance ahead of this review to play the game twice, but with two very different factions. I have played as the Vagabond, which is sort of this lone ranger running around the board, stirring up conflict, building relationships, grabbing items kind of faction. And I have also played as the Woodland Alliance, which is the rebel scum of Root. Basically, you're trying to spread sympathy around the board, build bases, train officers to let you do more actions. That's the Woodland Alliance. So those are the two I have played as.
Okay. So I've played as Marquis de Cat, I've played as the Woodland Alliance, and I've played as the River Folk, the lizard people.
The Lizard Cult, yeah.
Yeah, the Lizard Cult from the expansion. And they all play very different. Really and truly, and I think I just think it's so charming. But again, there's a ton of overhead in learning all of those things. I wish you'd been able to experience one of like the governmental factions because so your play style, did one of those factions suit your play style more than the other?
The Vagabond, to a degree, suited my play style. was sort of this roguish character running around, stealing stuff, stabbing people in the back, occasionally building up relationships. That specifically suited my playstyle. I found that really interesting, that you could kind of foment conflict and be the thorn in the side and be that thing, that cog in the machine that causes it all to crumble down. And meanwhile, you're this folk hero running around the board. I found that really compelling thematically and gameplay style-wise. I liked playing them. Yeah.
So I really, man, I liked them all. I just found them all really interesting. I just like pulling on the levers and seeing what happens.
You didn't play as the Eerie, right?
I have not played as the Eerie. I'm very excited to play as them because I really believe that they can be the most difficult, but in some ways I think that they have some of the biggest potential, and there's a balance there. So basically, the Eerie has a very rigid system, a very rigid government with this new leader that you have to program cards. So you take cards from your hand and you put them in these different action spots on the top of your board. And so I basically have to carry them out in order. I forget the order, but it's like move and attack and craft or something. And if you can't perform the action in the right type of clearing, your government falls apart and you lose everything and you have to install a new leader, which then affects everything. It's super interesting. And so I'm very excited to play that particular faction because I'm really looking forward to the challenge of that.
Yeah, I could see that. That's the faction I imagined when I imagined what would Sean have the most fun with.
Yeah, and I think so. And I was trying to avoid it for a couple different reasons, but that's the one I'm most excited to try at this point. I mean, the lizard cult was super, super cool. You basically you convert other players' pieces to your own. I really enjoyed all of these different factions, or at least the three that I've played, and just kind of getting a sense of what the other factions do that I haven't played yet. I've been thinking like, oh, okay, how would I play that? I'm thinking about this game a lot, Alex. And the hardest part is, am I going to be playing this with a group of people where we can just kind of jump in, learn the faction and go, or is it going to be with a bunch of new players? And that can be a slog. It really can.
Well, it's another one of those where you want everyone at the table to be at about the same level, if at all possible. Because a weak link in a game like this that's about not letting anyone get out of hand can lead to some pretty suboptimal moves in a way that might ruin the game experience. So yes. It's one where I think you want players of about the same experience level playing at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's probably ideal.
The one thing I found interesting too with this, Sean, was we haven't talked about the dominance cards yet, have we?
We haven't, no.
So the dominance cards are a way that they're not out on the table to start the game or at any point in the game, except when they are drawn from the deck and played. And when they're played, they stay out there, and you can claim a dominance card on your turn to basically say, hey, if at the start of my next turn I do this, I win. I don't have a score marker anymore. I don't care about score anymore. I just need to do this one thing, and then I win the game. And that's an interesting, different path to victory for sure, Sean.
Yes.
It also creates these situations of, hey, I'm set up to win. I will win. You better jump on me and try and knock me down before I get there. It makes it a little more obvious who's about to come out on top in some situations.
And you have to be careful with that, too, because by doing that, you put a big target on your back, and now this person who's at like 25 points and is trying to get to 30 has a little bit more breathing room because, oh man, you have, like, there's one dominance that I think is control the clearings in each corner of the board. And I've got 3 and I'm in position to get a 4th. And okay, I've got the 4th. Can everyone team up to knock me out of at least one elsewhere? And while they're all doing that, this other person's like, well, you guys have fun with that. I'm just going to score my points now that you've left me alone or stopped attacking me or whatever. So it's an interesting decision. And I think it's an interesting way to win the game and add a lot of variability to an already highly variable game.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And it keeps it from being too, I've heard this term used for this game, and and I don't know if you buy into this concept, Sean, solvable. I've heard this game be talked about as solvable.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, that doesn't sound right to me. Simply because if you think you've solved it, it means that the other players aren't doing enough to police you.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't think there's any way to have a truly unstoppable strategy if people are paying attention.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
So I think the biggest concern that I have for you in this type of game is combat resolution. You having dudes, attacking other dudes, getting attacked, whatever, and then you having to roll dice to see what happens. That's typically not something you're crazy about, right?
Right. But this game handles it in a really elegant, simple way, which is nice. It's simply put, roll 2 dice, pick the higher result if you're the attacker. Defender gets this one, unless except for a corner case with the Woodland Alliance. People have ambush cards. They can throw those out ahead of time. And pull off pieces, your choice of which pieces to pull off. Couldn't be simpler. So, yeah, I was not bugged by the combat resolution in this at all. It was not a part of the game that bogged down, and it wasn't a part of the game that was a barrier for me.
Okay. Do you ever feel, we talk about having clever moments. Does this game ever make you feel clever?
Yeah, there were definitely moments of cleverness, of trying to set up, especially when you're the Woodland Alliance, set up sympathy in places where you know people want to fight over.
Right.
And when you can do that, you're going to get a lot of supporter cards really fast and drain people's cards out of hand. It's a nice way to go about things. I enjoyed playing the Woodland Alliance for that reason. It gave the most potential for cleverness. The Vagabond does too, though. The Vagabond in the right situation of all of a sudden you're attacking, all of a sudden you're taking this relationship where you were feeding people cards and getting items from them, and all of a sudden you have stabbed them in the back and are setting fires and throwing the world into turmoil. Those are moments of cleverness for me in this game.
Yeah, no, I think I would agree with that. I think one of the best ways I feel clever in this style of game, or one of the most enjoyable ways I feel clever, is when I've successfully pointed everyone at someone else.
Yeah. Yep. My favorite part about something like Scythe, which I would think about this in similar terms, and I'll explain some of the differences in my final thoughts in terms of why they will have different scores. But one of my favorite things in Scythe is people not seeing the thing, not seeing, oh, he could end the game on this turn if we're not careful.
Right.
And going undetected in that way and kind of ambushing in a sense is really satisfying. I really enjoy that. And you can definitely do that in this game and have those moments.
What about player count? What player counts did you play at?
I played at 5 and at 3.
Okay. So I played at 3, 4, and 5, and I think 4 is the sweet spot.
Yeah.
I think 4 is where you need to be. I think 5 was just a little bit too busy. With the expansion, you could play up to 6, which I have zero desire to do that.
Yeah, 6 sounds absolutely insane, especially because these turns are pretty involved. This isn't a turn where you do a couple things, pass on the turn. This is something where you are doing oftentimes a bunch of stuff in a sequence. So, no, I would not want to play this with more than 4. I think 3 or 4 is where I'm going to stick with this game.
Yeah, so 3 didn't seem to offer enough. I don't know that tension's the right word, but there just didn't seem to be enough going on. Whereas 4, I just felt was a good balance of player counts. Most of the coin series are 4-player games or 4 faction games, and so you could have 3 people and then have a bot run the 4th one. But generally speaking, I think 4 is kind of the sweet spot, at least in my opinion.
Sean, let's talk theme.
I think this is a super thematic game. So you look at, say, the Woodland Alliance, right? The Rebel Scum, as you put it, their job is to garner sympathy from all of the creatures in the various clearings. And that happens, how does that happen? It happens like when a player removes your pieces from a clearing?
Yeah, when a player fights you, removes your pieces, or when a player even moves into a territory where you have sympathy. Sort of in response to, oh, here comes those armies again fighting over it. Why can't we have a better solution to this? And all of a sudden, sympathy rises in that clearing again. Yeah, it's really thematic. It's great.
It's super cool. And like with the Airy, right? It's these hawks that have these super rigid, the super rigid government, and just the idea of their whole government collapsing because they couldn't carry out their plan. Like, it's super cool. And even the Vagabond, which admittedly the Vagabond is the faction that I have the least interest in playing. It really just doesn't interest me at all, but it's still super thematic. You're running around the board, you're not using the same paths as everyone else. You're able to go through the forest because you're not an army. You're just this one person, this one animal. And you're sifting through the ruins looking for certain items, and you're kind of trading stuff with other players, and you're showing up at the right moment to help or to stab someone in the back. Like, this is super thematic.
Yeah, it is. And the cats, even this big imperial cat army out on the board. Again, yeah, I couldn't say it any better, Sean. It's an incredibly thematic experience, and I love how every faction feels unique and does things that are consistent with that, with their flavor.
Yeah. So I think really and truly this hits theme out of the park.
All right, let's talk guild thoughts before we get to our thoughts. BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, Root has been a big hit at Gumbo game nights. I've got 4 plays in, all with the bird faction. That's interesting.
Yeah.
This is not my typical style of game, but the race element, multi-use of the cards, asymmetric play, and delightful art make it a 5 in my book. It's not universally loved, though, by the crew. Many complain about the pace of the game or hate the race mechanic or loudly complain about the combat system. I'm curious if I'll still think it's a 5 in a year's time.
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about the multi-use cards. I mean, we kind of did, but I love games with multi-use cards. You're either crafting them or you're using them because they match a certain clearing type, or they're an ambush card for combat. And then each race uses the cards very differently. Like you were talking about the Woodland Alliance, who can basically siphon cards from other players. The Airy is using them to program their actions. Like, it's really clever how the different factions use the cards in different ways. It's super clever.
Yeah.
So Brett Maurer says, I've played Root twice now and used the birds my first game and won, and played with the otters the second time I played. Root isn't perfect, but evokes a couple thoughts that aren't always common with board games these days. You will immediately want to play again with the same faction so you can master your strategy for that faction. Secondly, and in stark contrast, a desire to try all the other factions as they are so different. There aren't many games that can boast both of these strengths after one play. Right now, I'd give it a high 4 in the Duchy with the possibility of being a 5 after using the other factions. And I think one of the most common things I heard after each play of this game was, oh man, if I'd realized how to play these much sooner, this would have been way different, Because really and truly, it takes a couple rounds for it to click what you're trying to do as that faction.
Yeah. And I will say, just as a little note for new listeners, we do rate things on a 6-point scale, so a 5 is not a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination, if you heard that number getting thrown around. Adam Dalton with some very quick thoughts. Root is awesome. Probably best game of the year. All right. Fair enough.
And then finally, Evan, he said, I found Root to be, okay. I think the game is very accessible for what it's trying to do, which is a streamlined, asymmetrical war game that can be played in under 2 hours. For that, it's a home run. But that said, the game can still be a bit of a challenge to grok, and the teach is long because everyone at the table needs to know what every faction can do in order to stop them. Furthermore, the game rewards multiple plays, which just isn't a thing in today's board gaming culture, where the cult of the new rules, and most gamers move on to the next hot thing. Finally, if you get the wrong faction for your playstyle on the first play, like playing the Airy when you hate programming, then you are unlikely to revisit the game. I played the Vagabond on my lone play, and in my game, nobody did anything to work well with the Vagabond's play style. As a result, my play experience was meh. I haven't gone back to it, although I would if it were pushed to the table. But did I get the incredible rush that other gamers have gotten from this? Absolutely not. I would give it a 3 on the Ducal scale, but it could easily rise to a 4 or 5 upon repeated plays, especially if I played a different faction.
All right. Sean, your final thoughts and your score on this one.
Yeah, so the question I asked before is, if this is a lighter style coin game, does this leave me wanting more? Does this make me wish, man, I wish I had spent these 2.5 hours playing a coin game instead, playing some Cuba Libre. And the answer is
no, it doesn't quite do enough.
Well, you sir are wrong. You are wrong, Alex.
Oh, man.
In fact, I said that the first time I talked about this in recent plays.
I wasn't listening. I never listened to that segment.
So faithful listeners will have already known what I was going to say. Yeah, no, this game, like, I can't think of other examples of games where it's like, oh, it's a lighter style of this, and man. So Poseidon. We played a game of Poseidon, which is kind of this entry-level 18xx, and afterwards, me and Matt Walker were like, man, that was just kind of a letdown. Like, yeah, it kind of scratched some of the itch, but with a couple more hours, we could have just played 1846 and had a much better time. I did not feel this with this. Now, certainly, I still enjoy the more complex coin games, but those are going to be even harder to get to the table. This was good. This was really good. I really enjoyed it. The accessibility, and it's funny because we spent a whole bunch of time talking about how it's not accessible. But as far as a war game, a complex war game, this is on the more accessible side for that. So I'm going to give this a 5. As you said, it's a 6-point scale. A 5 is a great game. Will rarely turn down a play of it. And that is a super solid 5, Alex.
Okay. All right. I could see that. Sean, I have given this some thought, and I will say this. On the asymmetricality of this game, in Scythe, it has asymmetric factions that have very different powers and work fairly differently, but aren't quite as different as they are in Root. In Scythe, it is important that you understand what people's mechs do, what their abilities are, in order to understand how they play and potential routes they might have to win the game. And I found myself grokking that very easily in Scythe. In this one, I did not, which has led to a couple of okay to good play experiences. I am intrigued by the theme. I am charmed by the game. I think it does everything it possibly can to try and have this be something that people get and come back to. And I anticipate that if I play this more, I will enjoy it more. And at this stage, though, it is somewhere between a 3 and a 4. Game is okay, not exciting, will play in the right situation. A good game worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy. I think, oddly enough, the asymmetricality hurts it in the short term and helps it in the long term. It hurts it in how easy the game is to get into, because it's not, but it helps it in the long term because I'm intrigued to try and master some of these different factions and play more and have really satisfying, engaging experiences with this, which I think are very possible. And because of that, it's going to tip it just barely onto the side of a 4. A good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy. I actually bought a copy of this and the expansion at PAX Unplugged, and unless I sell it for a good amount of money, I don't think I'm getting rid of this game anytime soon. This is one that I'm intrigued to play more, explore more, and hopefully find a dedicated group where we can really get invested in this in a better way. If that isn't the case a year from now, there's a good chance I'll have already sold it. So that's Root. A 5 from Sean and a 4 from me.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, finally, we have our Dukes Double Take. Talking about Queendomino from episode 165, Old Queen Cole. Sean, you gave this one a 4, calling it a solid gateway game that you will happily use to teach gateway gamers, but still with enough meat on the bones for you to enjoy. I give it a high 4 as well, almost a 5. I like it better than Kingdomino, and I think it's a sequel that outdoes the original. Those were my thoughts at the time. Sean, have you played Queendomino since?
I haven't. I've played Kingdomino since, but I would have rather have played Queendomino in that situation. I can't remember why I wound up playing Kingdomino instead. I don't know if it was availability or I don't remember. But yeah, it's still a 4. It's still a good game, worth playing, just all the time, belongs to the duchy. It is. I had said in the review that this is not something that I'm gonna. It's gonna be Chewy's asleep and Raquel and I bring out a 2-player game. It's not gonna be Queendomino. I mean, it's still gonna be something short, but it's gonna be something a little bit more meat on the bones than this. But I think as far as teaching a fairly new gamer, someone comes into Empire and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've played Sorry and I've played Settlers of Catan and Scrabble," I'll be like, "Oh, all right, let's try this." Although I don't know, like, because I feel like Azul, I'd use Azul. I'd pick this over Splendor. But it's such an interesting game. I like the not bidding. You're kind of bidding for turn order for the next set of tiles. There's the domino placement. There's trying to max your scores. It's good. Yeah, I think it's still a 4. Like, I was looking at it as part of the Purge, and I was wondering, am I getting rid of this? And I decided to keep it. So yeah, it's still a 4.
Okay. Sean, I've cooled on this one a little bit, if only because I haven't played it since, but I have played Kingdomino. And the truth of the matter is, in a lot of my game situations or game groups, Kingdomino is the one that I can break out with Abby and her friends and with family and in different situations. And I don't know when Queendomino is going to hit the table, weirdly enough. It just hasn't happened, and I don't know what the situation would be where it would happen. I feel like Abby enjoyed Kingdomino enough that Queendomino could absolutely be a thing. But it just hasn't occurred to me to do it just yet.
Sure.
This doesn't slip a point, but it does slip in standing from a high 4 to just a 4 for me. I'm not getting rid of it, but if we go another year without me playing this at all, that's going to say something about the game, I think. So, yeah, I like Queendomino a lot, and for some reason I just end up playing Kingdomino more. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, Guild had plenty of thoughts to say about this one. Rob Pettit said, "I'm a big fan of King and Queendomino, and everyone I've taught the game has enjoyed them. With that said, I have a hard time getting Queendomino to the table, as Kingdomino is the version that is typically requested with the Age of Giants expansion. I don't have that expansion, haven't played with it. People seem to like the simplicity of the rules and the quick play, and I think Queendomino is just a little too fiddly for them. For me, Queendomino is a 5, but because I can't get it in the table, it has to drop to a 4. Interesting."
Paul Daxter said, "Kingdomino has been a weeknight gaming favorite for quite a while, so we were excited to get Queendomino. Queendomino did not stay in the collection because it made the game longer and feel a bit fiddly. I think it suffered because the original game is so simple and accessible in comparison. I wonder what the reception would be if Queendomino came out first." And he gives it a 4 out of 6.
Kyle Kelly says, "I love Kingdomino, and I'm not really certain why. My tastes tend to trend medium heavy, Terraforming Mars, Lisboa, Orleans, Mage Knight, but there's something about the tile selection and placement of Kingdomino that I really love. It would either be a 5 or a 6 for me. I love Queendomino too, but I found it to be much more difficult to get to the table. I find with casual crowds it's too difficult for what it is, and with more mainstream gamers, it's not difficult enough. While I think I will always love Queendomino, I'm finding that I would rather have 2 copies of Kingdomino and play 4-player 7x7. I give Queendomino a 4 out of 6.
And then Brett Bowers says, "After my initial and only play of Queendomino, I can't decide if it's a necessary addition to the collection. Kingdomino was so accessible and easy to teach that the added elements in Queendomino almost make it stay on the shelf as a result. While I'd give Kingdomino a 4, I think Queendomino will stay at a 3 for now."
Then Adam Dalton says, "Queendomino was one I enjoyed quite a bit, but felt no need to purchase because I already owned and liked Kingdomino. I think a good analogy is King of New York and King of Tokyo. Both of the first games, Kingdomino and King of Tokyo, are quicker and simpler. While I love complicated games, for this level of a game, the quicker and simpler version makes the original better. Perhaps if Kingdomino had never been made, I would have Queendomino on my shelf." And that comparison is actually fantastic by Adam Dalton, because that's another case where I was very excited about King of New York when it came out, but I've played King of Tokyo since. I haven't even thought about King of New York. And I think this is likely to go the same way, Sean.
Point of order, sir. I went back and I listened to our review to get our scores.
Yeah.
And you said, good sir, that this is the opposite of King of New York, King of Tokyo. And I'm in agreement. I think King of Tokyo is the better game. King of New York, I had it, I played it, and I got rid of it. But you said that this is the opposite of that this is an improvement on the original. So,
well, and I agree with that, but in terms of its playability, in terms of how often it's going to come off the shelf and onto the table, I think that the analogy is actually pretty fitting. Even if I agree with you that I assess Queendomino as a better game than Kingdomino, King of Tokyo, the simpler game, and in this case, Kingdomino, has come out more often. and Queendomino and King of New York, whether they're better or not doesn't seem to really matter. They just don't seem to come out and hit the table.
All right, well, fair enough.
So, yeah.
All right, well, I guess that will do it for our Duke's double take of Queendomino. Still holding on to a 4 from both Alex and myself.
Hey, Sean, before we go, and I know you have to go like right this second, let's talk about the rest of the top 6. Jonathan Dodd came with the name PAX Sylvania. Nice name, got the Pennsylvania cross with a little PAX action in there. But did it cover other things? I don't know. Anyway, good job, Jonathan.
Well, first off, there was a little bit of workshopping. Originally started as Pax Sylvanus. And the woods and root.
Or Sylvania?
Sylvan is, Latin-ish for woods, for forest.
All right, well, yet again,
that
over
works.
my head. Fantastic.
Yeah. Kyle Kelly suggested heads or tails. The heads represents the heads of state, like a king or queen, and then tails are the tails on the animals and roots. I think that's pretty clever.
Yeah. The name father, Steve O'Rourke, who is in fact real and not a robot, came with the name Vagabonding, referencing the bonding time at PAX Unplugged, and of course the vagabond from Root.
Jesse Metcalf with, I think, what was probably a very close runner-up to the episode title. Instead of Marquis de Cat, suggested Marquis de Pax.
Very nice. I like that name a lot. And finally, Royce Calverley with Day at the Races. Sean, what?
Yeah, so this one, okay, Royce, this never had a chance of being the episode title. But the mental hoops you had to jump through to make this work, and it's quite clever, definitely needed some recognition here in the top 6. So, here's what he said on the guild. He said, Root, by the way, it's Day at the Races, Alex, because you really got to pay attention. All right?
I'm going to try.
Day at the Races. So, Root is about various species or races. All right? Day at the Races was the only tour that the group Queen ever did unplugged or acoustic along with Freddie Mercury. So now we've got Queen thrown in there, right? And acoustic or unplugged. Alex, what was the name of the convention you went to?
PAX Unplugged.
There you go.
Okay.
Thanks for getting the important part in there. So this is Root Races by Queendomino at PAX Unplugged.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
I am sore from all of those gymnastics, but it's very clever.
Oh boy.
So good job, Royce.
All right. Well, good job, Royce, and good job, everyone, and good job, you, Sean. Good job to you.
Hey.
All right.
Am I supposed to say back to you?
I guess you don't have to.
No,
but it's kind of common courtesy.
Well, I mean, if you're just fishing for compliments, Alex, I mean,
what's that? Oh, I got something on the line. It's not a compliment. It's just a boot. Dang it.
Well, thank you for showing up tonight for the podcast, Alex. I appreciate it.
Thank you for showing up, Sean.
All right, well, that's going to do it for episode 190. Thanks again to Blaine Miley for titling it Root of All Eagles. Root of All Eagles. Until next time, this is Sean.
And also still here, Alex.
And good job, Alex. See you later, everybody.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you so much for listening to The Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on December 6th, 2018. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, and Game Toppers, LLC. You can check out all of TMG's awesome titles at PlayTMG.com and find Arcane Wonders games at ArcaneWonders.com while learning about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on.